Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame induction ceremonies. Tonight, we've got a great group of inductees, as usual, in the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame. I'm Billy Weaver, Sports Director at WRBL News Channel 3. I will be your MC and host for this evening. Now, last year I MC'd the events, and Charlie Morrow hosted this event, and he is unable to be with us tonight, as many of you are well aware, and we're videotaping the whole session this evening, and that came about basically for Charlie Morrow. We want him to know that we're thinking about him, and that, thank you. And I tell you what, I just want to tell Charlie and everybody else, without him, none of us would be here this evening. Charlie Morrow is the backbone of not only the Columbus sports community, but definitely the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame, and without him, none of us would be here, and I want him to get back soon because I don't like this job. I would much rather him do it. Anyway, before we get started, I want to kind of break the ice, as every speaker does, and tell a little joke, but this is definitely for Charlie Morrow. So Charlie, this one's for you, buddy. Two people walking down the street. It's a minister and his son. They're walking down the street. Son's pulling a wagon behind him. Well, they're walking down the street and the left rear wheel of the wagon falls off. Well, the little kid looks up and he says, "Damn." Well, the preacher looks back at the son and says, "You can't talk like that. You're the son of a preacher man. Anytime any adversity comes to your life, look up to the sky and say, 'Praise the Lord.'" So they put the wheel back on the wagon and continue down the street. They get about a block away. The right rear wheel falls off. The little kid looks up to the sky and he says, "Damn." And the preacher says, "Now, son, I told you you can't say that. You have to say, 'Praise the Lord' in the face of adversity, and everything will be okay." So they put the wheel back on, continue down the street. Both front wheels come off. So the little kid looks up to the sky and he goes, "Praise the Lord." Well, magically, both of those tires lift up off the ground by themselves and put themselves back on the wagon. Little kid looks up at his dad. Preacher man looks up and says, "Damn." So Charlie, that was for you. But on a serious note, tonight we will induct 5 very special men into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame. A legendary high school coach, a Major League Baseball general manager and executive of the year, a golf guru, and 2 All-American gridiron greats. But before we get to all the accolades, of course, we'll sit down and have dinner, and right now I would like to welcome Chaplain Tom Wheatley up to the podium, and Chaplain Wheatley will make his way through the crowd and deliver our invocation for the evening.
Is the microphone right here?
That's it.
Okay. It's kind of hard to follow a joke like that when you're a preacher. I have a 2-year-old son and a newborn born on Christmas Eve, and I've heard my 2-year-old repeat "darn it" now a couple of times because I've used that, so it's a good joke. It's an honor to be here tonight. If you would bow your heads with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your presence anytime we're gathered like this, and especially when we gather to honor men who have done great deeds and have touched so many lives. We thank you for these 5 men that will be inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Hall of Fame tonight, Sports Hall of Fame. We thank you for their deeds and their accomplishments. We know that the skills and talents they have, they came from you. We thank you for using them to do so many things and to touch so many lives. And we just pray that we be able to honor them in the right way this evening. We also want to thank you, Father, for Charlie Morrow, the many things he's done, the lives he's touched. We know that you are with him even right now. We put him into your care, praying that you would return him to full health. And we will continue to pray for him while he's away. Father, we thank you for the food that we're about to receive. We pray that you would use it to strengthen us as we strive to do your will. And we know that you're always present and honor times that we gather like this. We pray that you'd help us to have fun and fellowship. And we pray all these things in your most holy name. Amen.
The meal was great. It's time to get to what we all came here for, and that's to honor these gentlemen sitting up here at the head table. Just want to let you all know, just because you see Bob Davis is not with us tonight, so just wanted to let you know why he couldn't be here. He said he wanted to be here very, very badly, but something that his company had been working on for years and years. They're merging with another company, and he's in Hawaii right now, so yeah. But he said he would rather be here. Somehow I don't know if I believe that, but anyway, he was real sincere when he said it. We'll go ahead and get things started. We put every year we put together a little video montage of each inductee, and I tell you what, it's a lot of hard, strenuous work digging up some of these old photos and some of the old films and things like that to put these together, and you'll see them over here on the monitor. And let's go ahead and get started. Our first inductee is a man responsible for molding the bodies and minds of literally thousands of young student athletes and taking 3 Columbus area high school sports programs to unprecedented heights.
If it's a sport, chances are James Bubba Ball played and coached it. He graduated from Bessemer High School in Alabama, where he participated in football, basketball, baseball, track, and tennis. Bubba went on to play professional basketball in the Southern Pro League and also played pro baseball in the minors. But where Bubba Ball has become a legend is in the field of coaching. In 1951, he claimed the Alabama-Florida League baseball pennant and simultaneously coached football and basketball at Baker High in Columbus. As if that weren't enough, in 1959, he also took over as athletic director and tennis coach. A quote in the Ledger-Enquirer read, "Bubba Ball, the Moses who led Baker High School out of the athletic wilderness." After a brief stint at Hardaway High School, Coach Ball took his talents to Shaw, where once again he wore many hats. Coach Ball's list of awards include Region Coach of the Year in 3 separate sports, 2 Georgia Coach of the Year awards in basketball. In 1997, the Atlanta Tip-Off Club awarded him for over 500 lifetime victories in basketball. 1 year later, he is inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to now present James Bubba Ball with the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame plaque. And he is our first inductee in the 3rd Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame class.
Well, you know, if you coach, you got a lot of people to thank. So we'll be here quite a while. First, I want to thank God for the opportunity and the players, the ability, knowledge, and strength to coach for 40 years at minimum wage. And I may also let you know that still in this area, if you coach in high school, you're working at minimum wage. And thanks to my family for the time that I was away from home. Particular thanks to my players. I have 2 of my basketball players here tonight, the 2 Dare boys who played on 2 state championship ball clubs. And while they were in school, I believe the record was something like 94-14. And then I want to also thank the 2 ADs I worked for. I worked for Ed Wolf, who was the Columbus boy who gave me my first job after I quit playing baseball. And Ed was a multi-sport person just like I was, so he didn't interfere with the ball bouncing in the gym. And then I worked for Grady Elmore, who also was a multi-sport person. And they both gave me all the support I needed. I was fortunate enough to work for 4 good principals: Ernest Cook, Fred Kirby, Dewey Renfro, and Gordon Stallings. And for you people that don't realize that if you get a bad principal, it's like being under a poor colonel. And I also want to say thanks to all the coaches that I played against and worked with me, because that's what makes the ball bounce. And a special thanks to the coaches who turned the Baker football program around. And these people, most of you know, Woodrow Alvin, Pig Davis, University of Alabama, great, and so were all his families. Dr. Foster Watkins, Dr. Lee Forehand. And I also, you know, when you haven't won much and you go to play and you tell kids, hey, we're going to turn this around, you know, they don't believe you. You go out there and you get your head knocked off and give them the big pep talk. You go out, they get hit about 4 times, and hey, that pep talk doesn't work. The first high school football player from Columbus to receive the Back of the Year in the state of Georgia was John Bowles, my son-in-law, sitting right here with the camera. Then I want to thank my many friends in Columbus who have been very supportive of me, and particularly the Jeff Weekly family, also the Shaw family of friends, and the support of them during the years. And got to turn over and find another page. I'm not going to be here that long, because this I can't do without. You know, if you have that many good athletes and you don't get the publicity they need, they don't get to go to college. And we want to thank the news media who gave us the exposure, which helped our kids to get all the scholarships, and a special thank to Cecil Darby. All of you know Cecil, he's the best. And then now I want to thank Debbie and Dusty, Austin and Alex for putting up with me. I'm grateful to the committee for this honor, and I want to say a very special thank you, Charlie Marr, for moving to Columbus, Georgia.
Our next honoree is one of 2 Jordan High graduates in this year's Hall of Fame class. And when I first came down to Columbus, I was like everyone else and wanted to call it Jordan. But now I call Michael Jordan. So I guess it all comes around. He played both football and basketball for the Red Jackets, but it was as a Yellow Jacket that he became a Columbus icon. So much so that the city actually gave him his own day and named it after him.
Bob Davis was an All-American tackle in 1947 at Georgia Tech, where he captained the football and basketball teams, the first man in more than 20 years to earn that distinction. He played 6 60-minute games for Tech in 1947 and was named to more All-America teams than any other collegiate lineman. He won 4 varsity football letters at Tech, playing as a freshman for Coach W.A. Bill Alexander, and the last 3 years for the legendary Coach Bobby Dodd. He was only 20 when he played his last season of football at Tech, where he played on 3 bowl teams. Tech had records of 9-2 in 1946 and 10-1 in 47. He was named to the National Football Foundation College Football Hall of Fame in 1978 after being named to Tech's Football Hall of Fame much earlier. Bob was also named 3rd team on the Southeastern Conference's all-time team. It was chosen in the year 1950. He became the first Columbus product ever to play in the National Football League, playing for the Boston Yankees in 1948. Bob is a member of the state of Georgia's Sports Hall of Fame and now has the distinction of being the first Georgia Tech player inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame.
Now, as I mentioned earlier, Bob Davis couldn't be here with us tonight, so accepting for Bob Davis tonight is a longtime friend of his, Floyd Mitchell. Floyd, would you come up and accept his award?
Mr. Weaver, nominees for the award in third class. It's an honor for me to speak for Bob Davis, who is not here. He's having a rough time out in Hawaii, but somebody has to do it. I think if Bob were here, he'd pay credit to Columbus for having adopted Charlie Morrow. Or I think it was the other way around. I think Charlie adopted Columbus, and we're better off because of it. He saw a need and he filled it, and that's what it's all about. And Charlie, we all hope that you're coming home soon. And home, I want to underline. Bobby was a good football player. He did many things for Columbus, and he was much like Charlie Morrow in that when he saw a need to be filled, he would fill it. Very modest. On a scale of 1 to 10, he had a -1 ego. I think all of you that know Bobby realize that. I'm going to say two things that he did for Columbus. I think Spec Rich will appreciate this. Peach League was looking for land to build a Little League field. They had only one. They couldn't put up fences. It was on the north side of Warracobra Park. And after the inventory was made, the recommendation was made to move across the street where they had some room and it wouldn't upset the beauty of the park, and that they could have all three of the leagues there. Well, it came up to a vote, and Bobby lobbied for the Peach League to get it. And I think that was about 1960. Well, 60 to 97, that's 37 years, 276 boys a year. You have some idea of what that means to Columbus. And Frank Thomas started his baseball career in the Peach League down on Wilkerson Field. It is named after Herb Wilkinson. And you have to give Bobby a lot of credit for his vision to get this complex built. We've had regional, we've had state and local championships in that area. The other thing about Bobby, I think when the history is written of Columbus in less than 2 years, we'll close the book on the last 100 years. And one thing that's happened was the consolidated government. Nobody's ever written or said who started this, who lit the match, whose idea was it to get a consolidated government. Bobby confided in me, he told no one else, that when he was a yarn salesman for Swift Spinning Mill, he called on Dan May in Nashville, Tennessee, who was on the city commission. And Dan was very much in politics and sports, and they would go out and talk. And Dan said, Bobby, you ought to try to get a metro government for Columbus, Georgia. I said, it's a fine thing. Bobby said, well, our county council, city council, and legislative council are at odds with each other, and I couldn't possibly do it. Dan says, well, the people will want it. If you get it to the people, you'll have it. He says, one of the hardest things we had to overcome was consolidated schools. Said that is 50% of the work. Bobby said, well, we've just consolidated our county and city schools. He says, you're halfway there. So Bobby invited Dan May to come to Columbus, Georgia, and speak at the Rotary Club, where the movies and shakers were. And from that day on, it started. A lot of people worked on it, but it was Bob Davis that brought it home. I want to end this. I've probably taken too long, but I wanted to get it on the record. It was Grantland Rice that wrote this. You've heard it many times. When the one great score comes to mark against your name, it matters not whether you won or lost, but how you played the game. And I think the great score for Bob Davis would say, a great athlete, a modest man, a good man, an honorable man, but only an average golfer. Thank you.
Our next Hall of Fame member also went to high school right here in the Bi-City area and had the honor of playing college football for the great Bear Bryant at the University of Alabama. He still adorns the Tide record books and even managed to play more than a decade in the NFL at one of the game's most physical positions.
Woodrow Lowe is a true Alabama football success story. He played 2 years as fullback and linebacker for Central High School in Phoenix City, but he wasn't heavily recruited. He signed a grant in aid to the University of Alabama, where he played 4 years as linebacker. In those 4 years, folks stood up and took note of Woodrow Lowe. He was named to the National Football Writers Association All-America team as a sophomore in 1973. When the Crimson Tide won the UPI national title. He was again named to the All-America team in 1974 after helping Alabama to its second consecutive undefeated regular season, despite being plagued by injuries, and he three-peated as UPI All-American in 1975. He played on 4 consecutive SEC championship teams that won 43 games while losing just 5. He was often compared to immortal Tide linebacker Leroy Jordan by the legendary Coach Bear Bryant. He was selected in the 5th round of the NFL draft in 1976 by the San Diego Chargers and played 11 seasons with the Bolts. In 1993, he helped Central High School win the state championship, and now he is a member of the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame.
Please welcome to the podium, Woodrow Lowe.
Thank you very much. I want to just tell you all one thing. You just don't know how hard it is to get up here and talk about yourself without realizing that you look out here in the audience and you see so many people that I consider greater than myself. I ain't that good at talking in public. I won't tell you that, but I got a lot of people to thank, and the most important concept that I can think of is that I got to thank is God. I've been very fortunate I've been the most, I look at it like I've been the most fortunate person that ever lived. And thinking about it, I gotta thank my mom and dad for coming up in the situation that I did. You know, we didn't have a lot, but one thing we did have, we had love. And I wanna thank my oldest brother who taught me to be consistent, be tough. And I tell you, I can't thank all the people that I can say that have something to do with my life. And it's very, very difficult for me to stand here and try to express that because words can't explain it. My greatest joy that I got is playing this game. And I tell you, I was most fortunate to play on a system and a guy like Coach Bryant because I think that prepared me to go on and be unselfish. Now look, I want to tell y'all something. I looked on that film right there and I intercepted that pass and I did a little dance and I couldn't believe it. The reason why I couldn't believe it, Bubba, because I knew I came up in a system where, as compared to today, you see players make great plays and they dance and they jiggle and they do all those different things in the end zone. But I remember playing Coach Bryant. He said, when you make a good play, just get up and go on back to the huddle. Act like you're used to it. That's what he said. Those are the things that he said. So, that's enough about that, though. But I also want to thank my wife, who put up with me all these years, and my children who put up with me all these years. And I also want to thank. I see a Mr. Mullins over there that I remember when I was just in the 7th grade, and this guy right here was still the same guy, and he looks the same. You haven't aged a bit. I can't understand that. And I see Dwight over there. I haven't seen Dwight in a long time, and he looks the same. I don't understand it. I can't understand it. You got to be living right. But all in all, I got so many people I can thank, and in one way that I can show that gratitude, other than words, is that when I left here, there's been a lot of struggles. And if it were not for the patience and the perseverance and the scoldings and the patting on the backs and all those things that you all did to help me along the way, I could not stand up and show the same qualities that I do to my kids right now. I couldn't do it. And my love right now is helping people. I found out that the more you can give of yourself, that is the greatest gift of all. You know, I've been giving this and giving that, and you give your kids this and you give your kids that, and they forget about it. But when you give yourself, that'll last forever. And one of my greatest joys was right over there at Central High School, and I tell you, it was such a pleasure to come back to where you came from and totally give yourself free. I mean, whatever it takes, so that you can see the success in a kid that you know that's facing more obstacles than what you had to face, because they got a lot of options nowadays. They got a lot of choices. And that's what I'm about. And I am so grateful to stand here and continue to grow and as a human being. I'm not about to die now. I'm finna struggle. It's a struggle. That's what I'm about, struggle. Thank you very much.
Well, I tell you what, for somebody who doesn't like to speak in public, you didn't do half bad. And Jim, I think we found a new MC for next year's banquet. Anyway, moving on. To excel in sports, you don't have to have the home run power of a Frank Thomas, the breakaway speed of a Nate Odoms, or the backswing of a guy like Larry Mize. And our next honoree is a prime example of that. He was instrumental in the success of 2 Major League Baseball teams in the front office, and even signed the legendary Hank Aaron to a contract in the South Atlantic League.
Spec Richardson is baseball through and through. He graduated from Jordan High School and he began his 42-year baseball career right here in Columbus, Georgia in 1946, where he was the assistant business manager at historic Golden Park. His first general manager's job came in 1959 with Houston's AAA team. And then in 1962, Speck had made it all the way to the big leagues as business manager for the Houston Astros. 6 years later, he was running the show as Houston's GM. In 1976, Speck moved even further west to take over the reins of the San Francisco Giants. And in 1978, Speck had his most crowning moment. The Sporting News named him Major League Baseball's Executive of the Year. He's seen here with one of baseball's all-time greats, Frank Robinson. In the mid-'80s, he returned to the Peach State as president of Savannah's minor league team. And in 1987, he went down to Florida and took the job of vice president of the Tampa Bay Suns. His main goal there, bring Major League Baseball to the Tampa Bay area. And a few years later, the dream had become a reality. The Tampa Bay Devil Rays were born. Speck is a member of the South Atlantic League Hall of Fame, and in February of 1998, Speck Richardson is inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Billy. Inductees, ladies and gentlemen, certainly gives me a great pleasure to be here tonight, and I just want to tell you that this is the greatest award I've ever received since it came from my hometown. And I certainly thank the Hall of Fame committee for voting me into the Hall of Fame. But I want to thank Charlie Mara. Billy's already talked about it. But if it weren't for Charlie Mara's efforts, I wouldn't be standing tonight, wouldn't be inductees into the Chattahoochee Valley Hall of Fame because it wouldn't be a Chattahoochee Hall of Fame. I had the pleasure of going out to Columbus State University when Dr. Brown named the baseball clubhouse that Charlie had built when the Red Sticks had to move out of Golden Park on account of Olympics. The Charles B. Mara Clubhouse. And during that ceremony, there's 2 or 3 speeches made. But the speech that impressed me the most, talking about Charlie Mara, was made by Herb Green, the basketball coach, athletic director of Columbus State University. He was talking about Charlie, and he said that Charlie Mara always took anything he did to the next level. And Charlie Mara certainly has taken the Hall of Fame to the next level, and I want to thank him because without it, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. Also, when Charlie had his problems, he turned the work on the Hall of Fame over to a fellow in his office named Jim White. And I think you all give Jim White a nice hand because he's done a tremendous job in Charlie's absence. As I said, I went to Jordan High School. I enjoyed every minute of it. My days at Jordan High School prepared me for going into baseball. But ball talking about how a lot of people think. We got a couple hours, haven't we? I've got a lot of people think. Jordan High School, I want to thank Frank David. He was the athletic director and assistant principal. He gave me the job as manager, business manager. He directed me in the right direction. And when the St. Louis Cardinals called for somebody to come down to Golden Park and make out reports for the ball club, he called me in his office and said, "Speck, why don't you go and co-op and go down, it's your last year, and go down and make out those reports and pick you up some pocket money," he said. So I went on co-op, went down and made out my reports, and went to school at Jordan. Other one at Jordan High School I want to thank is B.F. Rester. Mr. Rester was a great basketball coach, baseball coach. And he taught the boys to live right and do what is right. Oh, and Red Jenkins, football coach. I didn't know what a farm club was till I got in baseball, but I can tell you, when I was in high school, we used to be a farm club for Wallace Butts and the University of Georgia football team. Y'all may not know that. But we used to have 5, 6, 7 ball players. Wallace used to send to Red Jenkins every year, and they needed 1 or 2 credits in high school so he could go back and play. So we were the farm club of the University of Georgia. I didn't find out what a farm club was till I got to baseball in 1946. But Frank David sending me down to make out those reports for the Cardinals. After I graduated from Drayton High School, I went to the Navy, served aboard destroyer escort, discharged while I was in the Navy in the Pacific. Bill Walsingham of the Cardinals sent a letter to me at my mother's home. She forwarded it to me. He wanted to know if I'd like to be concession manager at Columbus, Georgia in 1946. Of course, I wrote him back and told him yes. He wanted to know when I was supposed to get discharged. I told him in November. But as my luck run, I got held over to February the 16th. I got discharged at Jacksonville, Florida on February 16th. I knocked on the door at the old Waverly Hotel. There was a door of Bing Devine, who was the business manager for Columbus, Georgia, in my Navy uniform, on the morning of the afternoon of the 16th. And I went to work on February the 17th as concession manager at Columbus, Georgia. Now I want to tell you, back in those days, we had Bing Devine and myself as secretary, and we had a position called traveling secretary. That meant bus driver. And I want to introduce to you my good friend, my publicity director. All these years I've gone, he's sports editor to the Columbus Ledger. And he used to write columns about me to keep all my fans informed of what Old Spec was doing. Cecil Darby, stand up. Used to be, that was the staff. Now, I don't know how many people you have in the office. Sometimes some clubs have a lot of people in the office. But we drew about 147,000 people. Well, just a little handful of people. The other guy that was at that ballpark back in, when I was down there, he wasn't selling peanuts then, he was selling cold drinks. And his name's Willie Bowman. Willie, where are you? You gotta be in somewhere, Willie. Before I get off the Columbus Baseball Club, there's been 3 people that went through Golden Park. 3 guys that went through Golden Park. I was lucky enough to be one of them. Bing Devine and Bill Burgess went on to run Major League Ball Club as general managers of the Big League Ball Club. And I think that's an outstanding record for the town of Columbus, Georgia, to have 3 general managers at the Big League level. 1978, I talked to the Cardinals. I wasn't getting any more money about advancement. They said they didn't, Bill Walsingham told me he didn't see any room for advancement for me. So I left the baseball business. Joe and Agnes Conley had Metcalf Sports Shop. I went to work traveling for him, calling on colleges and semi-pro clubs, selling sport equipment. And then I'm getting ahead of myself. That's all right, Joe. I'll come back to it. Then my friend from Jacksonville, Florida, called me, offered me a job in Jacksonville. I went to Jacksonville February the 1st, 1949, as business manager at that ball club. There was a Jacksonville Tars at that time, working agreement with the Giants. 1961, the ball club was sold to a fellow named Sam Wolfson, his brothers Lou Wolfson, Nathan Wolfson, Cecil Wolfson, Saul Wolfson. And I was retained named general manager of the ball club. The fellow that I went to work for in Jacksonville in 1949 was named Crowther Boyd. He and I remained friends ever since 1949. and we talked, and we seen each other just about every year until he died about 4 years ago. Wilson sold the ball club to Bill Terry, the old giant first baseman and giant manager. I left Houston in 1949, went to Houston to run a AAA club for the old Cardinal shortstop Marty Marin. 1961, a fellow named Roy Hoffines, who had the big league franchise for Houston Expansion Club, started playing in 62, bought the ball club, and retained me as general manager of the AAA club. For some reason, the judge liked the old country boy. He named me business manager of the Houston Ball Club in 1962. I worked with him on construction of the Astrodome. He named me general manager in 1967 of Houston Club. Judge Hoffman was one of the brilliantest people I ever met in my life. He got the idea for building the Astrodome from the Roman Coliseum in Rome. He also bought the Ringling Brothers Circus while I was there with him. And they signed the papers with John Ringling North at the Coliseum in Rome. I used to tell some of my ball players I had, if they couldn't play ball, I'd give them a shovel, let them follow the elephants along in the parade route. I left there, I went to the Giants. And had 7, 8 nice years in California. I feel for them out there now, all that water. And all these people I mentioned, I want to thank. I want to thank Chuck Feeney and Lee McPhail, president of the American National League. They were a lot of help to me in my career. I have a girlfriend tonight. My wife knows it too. I'd like to ask a young lady named Caitlin Hyde. She's 8 years old. She's back there with her daddy, Richard, to stand up and wave to everybody. Honey, you deserve it. Come down to see me go in the Hall of Fame tonight. I'm very honored to have two people that come all the way down from Fargo, North Dakota yesterday to be here tonight and leave tomorrow morning and go back. My great friends, Lois and John Dietrich. John's a great baseball player, great baseball general manager, and Lois keeps him straight. Stand up, please. Now, last but not least, 1946, when I was with the Columbus Club, the Cardinals had 26, 27 baseball teams at that time. Most all the big league clubs did. And they used to send you telegrams, say, I'm sending you Walter Rona, signs the contract for $75 a month. And you send so-and-so to Lynchburg or someplace. Western Union used to call you and read the telegrams to you. Then you have to go by and pick them up. So I used to go by Western Union and pick up these telegrams. And this good-looking girl was on the counter. And Bing Devine, who was the business manager that year, when I was concession manager, he said to me, he says, why don't you ask that good-looking girl for a date? So I finally asked her for a date. The ball club was going to go up to a fish camp on the river after the ball game. Ball game got rained out, so I went a long way out. I had to cancel, break the date. But we finally got together, and I found out she was really worried about that date with me going up to the fish camp. She thought ball players, people connected with baseball was horrible. But she was my sweetheart, my wife and best friend for 49 years. My wife, Tommy. Stand up, honey. I probably missed some people. If I do, I'm sorry. I just want to say again that I'm very happy to be inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Hall of Fame.
In 1930, William Hughes Zimmerman won the first of his 5 Augusta City championships and went on to win the Augusta Country Club Championship 3 times in succession. At age 19, he won the Georgia State Amateur Championship in Rome, Georgia, and in 1942, won the Atlanta Capital City Invitational. In 1952, he won the Columbus Bi-City Championship, and 20 years later, he won the International Seniors Championship in Gleneagles, Scotland, back-to-back, and was the runner-up in 1974. He is the only Georgian to win this tournament. In 1980, at the age of 64, he won the U.S. Seniors Golf Association Tournament at the Appomattox Club in Rye, New York. And again, he is the only Georgian to win this prestigious event. In 1991, he was the runner-up in the 3-10 at Pinehurst, North Carolina, and won it in 1992. A member of the Board of Governors of the Augusta National for 15 years, a member of the Board of Governors of both the American Seniors and the U.S. Senior Golf Association, and also served a term as president of GSGA and the Country Club of Columbus. He was inducted into the Georgia Golf Hall of Fame in January of 1996, and now we welcome him into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame.
Bill Zimmerman, inducted into the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, all this business began about 1930, and I can remember very distinctly one night my father came home from work, and believe it or not, he had some golf clubs, and unbelievable, I asked him, I said, Dad, what in the world are these things? He said, son, these are golf clubs. I said, well, what are you going to do with them? Because he loved to fish. And he said, well, I'm going to take up the game of golf. And what had happened was simply this, that the Depression had come along, and he was in the lumber business, and they sold a lot of lumber to the municipal golf course that just opened in Augusta. And unfortunately, they couldn't pay the bill for the lumber. So they wanted him to come out and go ahead and play golf, and they would let him play for free, and they would take the amount of the green fee and apply that to the money that they owed him. So he decided that what he was going to do was to get me to come on out there too, and then they could hurry up and eliminate that debt a little bit easier. So I started playing at the Augusta Municipal Golf Course in 1930, and I worked on my game diligently. There was a magazine called The American Golfer that came out each month, and there was an article in it that was written by Bob Jones, and it was on a different phase of the game every time the magazine came to press. And if you read that article and looked at the pictures of Jones and whatnot, that was the pro that taught me how to play golf, really. And what I'd do is I'd go out in the backyard and I'd throw a blanket over a rope and start hitting balls in that blanket and then go out and play. And as a result, in 1931, I was a city champion of Augusta, Georgia. That's how quick it was, and that's how hard I worked on that game. And I've been working on it ever since, and here it is, 1990-something. And I'm still going strong. I'm still working hard. But it's been a marvelous thing for me, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've met a lot of people. I've played golf in Scotland. I played golf in Japan against the Japanese seniors. We've just had, Francis and I have had some great golf trips. Golf courses are marvelous no matter where they are, and you'll enjoy them no matter where you play. And it's always a good competitive game because you can take anybody, and if the handicaps are correct, you can have a pretty close game. You might be giving your opponent 10 shots, but he needs 10 shots to make it an even game with you. So if you don't play golf, let me just say this. Go ahead and start, because I'm sure that you will enjoy it thoroughly. And I'm most appreciative to the Georgia Hall of Fame for inducting me, and I hope that I'll be worthy of the great honor that you've bestowed upon me. It's been marvelous and wonderful, and I've enjoyed every second of it, and I hope I'll live another 20 years. Thanks a lot.
Once again, I would like to congratulate each and every one of our inductees. You're all definitely worthy of this honor, and I'm definitely honored to be up here with such a great group of men. Maybe, I'm sure all of you have seen the easel in the back of the room. It was out in the foyer before, during the social hour. I've had people come up to me and ask me, well, where can we go see the Hall of Fame inductees? And you know, every Hall of Fame has an actual Hall of Fame where you can see these things. Well, until just recently, there wasn't such a place, but now there will be. And it's going to be at the Civic Center. And if you all are familiar with the Civic Center, when you walk into the front door, there's a ticket office there. Over to the right, there is an atrium, and that's where the new Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame multimedia display wall will be located. It's supposed to be, from what I understand, a very, very high-tech and like it says, multimedia display. It will have each inductee's plaque up on the wall. The space is kind of limited over there, so what they'll do is they'll have each inductee up for a while and then take a smaller plaque that will remain there forever, basically. Displays such as Frank Thomas's bat, maybe Larry Mize's golf club, I don't know, Spec, maybe we'll get, I don't know, your glasses or something and put them in there. But some memorabilia, some sports memorabilia from the people inducted into the Hall of Fame, and they'll be changed out periodically. And there'll also be a touch screen. It's a 35-inch color monitor in the middle that you can actually walk up and get information not only on the Hall of Fame members, but Columbus sports in general and professional sports. You can, you know, learn about the Red Sticks or the Cottonmouths, and you know, once again, this was the brainstorming of Charlie Morrow, and without him, none of this is possible. The program will be updated annually, and at the top, there's spaces for advertising, and I know Jim White wants to make sure we get that out. There's advertising at the top, and from what I hear, there's a couple spaces still available, so of course you can talk to Jim White after the program if you're interested in such an endeavor. And from what I hear, it's a very reasonable price for a lot that you get out of it. And I hope I'm not forgetting anything else about the actual multimedia center, but I'm sure Jim White can tell you anything else you need to know about it, and Command Systems have done a wonderful job putting all this together. Now, to the part of the program, I know a few of you have probably wondered who and what this man is next to me here. Bobby Richardson, one heck of a ball player, period. No ifs, no ands, no buts about it. Bobby Richardson joined the New York Yankees at the age of 19. We were talking earlier, and I told him I was a Mets fan, but hopefully he'll forgive me for that. Over the next 12 years after the age of 19, Bobby played in more than 1,400 games while the Yankees were winning American League pennants in 9 of his first 10 years. He was named Most Valuable Player in the 1960 World Series. Bobby still holds numerous World Series records. These records include most RBI in a single game, RBIs in a series, and most hits in a series. He also holds the record for having played in 30 consecutive World Series games, which to me is unbelievable, and remains the only player from a losing team to be named as the most valuable player in the World Series. Bobby finished as runner-up to the legendary Mickey Mantle in the voting for AL MVP in 1962. He was a member of 7 American League All-Star games and won 5 consecutive Rawlings Gold Glove Awards. After retiring from the Yankees at the tender young age of 31, Bobby became baseball coach at the University of South Carolina. We talked about a mutual person, Mookie Wilson. Of course, he was a Met. Having retired from college coaching, Bobby served as president of baseball chapel and served on the baseball assistance team board. Bobby remains active in the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and now serves as a consultant to Gospel Films, which is the Christian film company in Michigan. So, folks, please welcome Bobby Richardson, our keynote address speaker for this evening.
Thank you very much. And I'm honored to be here. I can't believe the caliber of person you've inducted tonight. I'm honored to be here and to be here when they're being honored. The reason I'm dressed like I'm dressed tonight is because Jim White called me a good long time ago, but I committed myself to babysit for my 3 granddaughters. I have 11 granddaughters, and 3 of them live in Sarasota, Florida. And about 10 days ago, my wife and I went down to babysit. My daughter's married to a youth pastor, and he was going to a youth conference. Now, I thought I was going back to South Carolina, and I could change clothes and have ties and everything, but it didn't work out that way. She needed help down there, and we've been taking them to school, picking them up, and just having, this is a rest for me tonight. I'm really glad to be here. And also, I was invited because Speck is a cousin of mine, and he knew that he could get me to say some things. He gave me a big bill here tonight to say some nice things about him, and I'm honored. The one thing I would like to say, though, is when you're honored like this, there are folks that need to be thanked. And I'm glad that all of those who were honored tonight took the time to thank those that made a big impact in their lives. The one thing I would like to say is not always do you deserve what is said about you in your biographical sketches or as they look back on your record. For instance, in my biographical sketch, it says the only Yankee to hit 300 in the year 1959. Now, the Yankees won the pennant in 55, 56, 57, 58, and also in 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. But we missed out in 59, and I know now why we missed out in 59. Going into the last game of the season, Casey Stengel came over to me and said, hey, we don't have a single 300 hitter on the Yankees this year, and you're batting .299. If you can get a base hit first time up tomorrow, I'm going to take you out of the lineup, and then we'll have at least one 300 hitter. Well, word sort of got around that I needed a base hit. We were playing the Baltimore Orioles, and Billy O'Dell was pitching. He and I quail hunt together, and he sent word over to me, be throwing the ball right in there the next day. Brooks Robinson was playing third base, and he sent the word over that he'd be playing real deep if I wanted to bunt. And Joe Ginsberg was the catcher, and he said, I'll tell you what's coming. And first base umpire was Ed Hurley. He said, just make it close. Well, I sort of had a lot going for me, but my best friend was Albie Pearson. He was playing right field, and somehow he didn't get in on it. I hit a line drive to right center. He made a diving catch out in right center field. But I got 2 hits the next 2 times up and ended up hitting 301. And then Billy mentioned the fact that I set a record that still stands of the most RBIs in the World Series. And the way that came about, we were playing the Pirates back in 1960, and in that 3rd game of the series, I was batting 8th because Whitey Ford was pitching. Anytime Tommy Byrne or Don Larson pitched, I batted 9th in the lineup. And we, in the first inning, scored 3 runs. There was 1 out, and the bases were loaded. And I came up to the plate, and usually in a situation like that, Casey Stengel would holler out, hold that gun. That meant come on back and let Enos Slaughter hit for you. Well, I didn't hear anything. Walked up, looked down at my coach at third base. He gave the signals, and I couldn't believe it, but he was giving me the bunt. That's not a good play, but bases loaded, 1 out, pitcher up next, and he had me bunting. Well, I fouled the ball off twice. The count went out to 3-2, and Frank Crissetti hollered out, hit the ball to right field, stay out of the double play. And I was trying to hit a ground ball to the right side. Clem Levine threw a fastball in here, and I swung. And I was more surprised than anybody in the stadium when it went out of the park for a grand slam home run. Then the next time up, the bases were loaded, and I thought, man, I'll just try that again. Well, I singled, and it set a record that still stands. Now, I only had 26 RBIs all year long, 1 home run, but I set a record that still stands. I just say that to say that sometimes, as you look back, you don't mention that part of it. You just say, well, he sets a record. You know, the one thing I'd like to do, and we've had some wonderful remarks. Woodrow, I appreciated what you had to say tonight and some others. And I think it's an honor when your hometown honors you like you have done here tonight, or your home area. And I heard a story about a person who was being honored in his hometown. He had been off for a long time, and he came back home, and there was a big banquet like we're having tonight, and this particular person gave him a very gracious introduction. And he got up and he started to speak, and everybody noticed there were tears in his eyes. And finally, the one that introduced him asked him what was the matter. And he said, well, I had some prepared remarks that I wanted to make, but I'd like to put them aside and share with you what is the matter. And then he went on to relay that years earlier he'd gone off to New York to make his mark. And he said he was walking along looking at the tall buildings and apartment houses, and he happened to come to a vacant lot, and there were a group of young boys playing baseball. He said he had a plank for a bat and the ball was wrapped with tape, and he watched this game for a little while. And he noticed sitting over the sidelines, there was a boy with his legs dangling. He said he talked with him a little bit longer and found out there was an operation that could be performed. The boy had slipped on the ice, and he was paralyzed from his waist down. But the boy and his parents had the money. And so he said he went back to his hotel room and wrote some letters. And it wasn't very long before he started receiving replies. Checks and $100 bills came out of the envelopes, and he had the money. And he said he went back to the boy and with the aid of the parents made the arrangements with the doctor. And he said, as I speak to you here today, 25 years later, I'm happy to say the operation was successful. The boy could walk as though he had never been injured. He said, I wish I could say that in the ensuing 25 years, this boy is now himself a fine athlete or a doctor or a lawyer, businessman. But as I stand here today, the tears in my eyes are because I've just received word that this boy is in prison serving a life sentence. He said it goes to prove that men and dollars can provide the means of performing an operation that can make a boy walk, that only God can guide footsteps. And you know, when I heard that, I was challenged in my life in 3 areas. And as we honor these gentlemen here tonight, I'd like to throw that challenge your way. And the first area that I was challenged in is to recognize it's important how we live. There is a power in our example. Now, I like to fish, and we've got a big lake there in South Carolina called the Santee, and we have a fish called striped bass that we call rockfish. And some years ago, I was fishing with a friend by the name of Lee Fisher. I used to do some writing for Billy Graham. And we were catching some of those striped bass, and I remembered that I was to speak to a group of athletes in the lower part of our state. And I asked Lee to go with me, and he did. And while we were there, I used these words that I had read in a magazine. A careful man I want to be, a little fellow looks at me. I dare not go astray for fear he'll go the self-same way. I cannot once escape his eyes. Whate'er he sees me do, he tries. Like me, he says he's going to be this little lad who follows me. I must remember as I go through summer suns and winter snow, I'm building for the years to be this little lad who follows me. We got back down on the Santee and started fishing. My friend was really quiet, and finally I asked him what was the matter. And he said, well, I thought you were going to acknowledge me as you spoke to that group. And I said, why? He said, because I wrote those words 15 years ago when I recognized the influence I had in my own son's life. There is a power in our example. And then the second area that I was challenged in is to make sure that we don't portray one thing on the outside and see it break down at home where our true nature is revealed. Now, it's a rapid pace of a world that we live in today. I'll drive back tomorrow to Sarasota, but I might have that little granddaughter say, hey, Granddad, I've got something I want to talk to you about. And we might say, well, I'm going to go to Columbus. I'll be back day after tomorrow, talk to you at that time. And if it's our son or grandson, we'll put our arm around him and say, yes, sir. I'd like to see my son or my grandson grow up to be a man's man. What is a man's man? My last year in baseball, I had room with Tony Kubek for 10 years. And Tony retired, and so I roomed with Steve Hamilton. He played with the Lakers in basketball. He was 6'8" and a half. And I remember so well that he was up there and I'm down here, and they had a lot of names for us, Mutt and Jeff and some other names. And one day we were at the Crest Hotel in Anaheim, California, walked into the lobby, and Elston Howard was sitting with what had to be the biggest man I'd ever seen. I guess we stared because finally Elston said, hey, Rich, come over. Let me introduce you to somebody. Well, Steve and I walked over, and this guy stood up. He looked down at Steve Hamilton, and he said, how you, Shorty? Found out he was 8 feet, 3 inches tall. He weighed over 300 pounds. He wore a size 22 shoe, biggest man I'd ever seen, and quite a baseball fan. He came up to our room that night after the game, and I had just written a book at that time, and I stood up on the bed and gave him a copy of the book. And he told us that in 2 weeks he was going to be in Minneapolis dressed in a Twins uniform. I knew there would be some folks in Sumter that would say, how can you retire from the Yankees at 31? And so I bought one of the little Instamatic Kodak cameras, and I couldn't wait to have my picture taken in uniform with Henry Height. This was his name. And then when they asked that question, I'd just show them the picture and say, look at the young pitchers coming to the league. They're too big. They throw too hard. Well, I was too embarrassed to go out and have my picture taken, just too much of a contrast. But just the other day, my wife and I were flying to New York, and we were separated for a moment at Douglas Airport in Charlotte. And I remember that she came up to me and said, I've seen your friend, Henry Height. And I said, how do you know it's him? She said, it's got to be. Went over and talked. It was indeed. Biggest man I've ever seen. But the man's man we're talking about is more than that. He's one that dares to stand for a principle when the whole world stands against him, dares to uphold the right against all odds, doesn't yield easily to the whims of the crowd, flashpoint against sin, dares not to laugh at an obscene story, is indignant when men use the name of Christ in cursing, smeared around with lewd banner, has the courage to guard what is sacred, and dares to profess love for God in the midst of a materialistic, secular crowd, is ruled by principle when most are governed by expediency, and isn't sucked in by the stupid philosophy. Everybody's doing it. Now, we'd be in agreement with saying, I'm glad that size doesn't enter into it. It's what's in the head, and especially the heart, that counts. Strength of will, not muscle. Purpose, not brawn. The ability to finish, to see a thing through. Now, I'm not about to stand up here and say, hey, I fall into that category, and neither would you. I'm like that passage in Romans 7. It says, I know what's right, I know what I want to do, know what I should do, but invariably do the opposite. And the question is asked, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me? And that brings us to the last area. It's even more important, perhaps, than the first two. The first is to understand it's important how we live. The second is not to let it break down at home. But finally, do we have in our lives a religion or a philosophy that you can read about in a book, or something real in our life that we know won't fail? Probably the most humbling experience of my lifetime was having my friend and my teammate Mickey Mantle's funeral in Dallas, Texas, just a couple years ago. Mickey and I had a close friendship, and 10 years ago, actually 12 years ago now, I had Roger Maris's funeral in Fargo, North Dakota. Mickey Mantle was a pallbearer, and he came up to me and he said, hey, I want you to have my funeral. He'd been drinking a little bit, and I don't remember what I said, but I think I probably said something like, well, I'm sure you'll outlive me. Didn't happen that way. We were in Dallas, Texas, and sure enough, Mickey and I talked on the phone. And he asked me to have his funeral. 3 days before he died, my wife and I went out and spent those last hours with him in the room. And then when I had his service on national television, I closed with these words. He had a special day in New York, and he'd heard me use them before. And he said, I want on that day to use those words. Well, at the last minute, he decided not to, and I think very appropriately. But on this memorial service on national television, I use these words that I think are the summation of my remarks here tonight. It says, your name may not appear down here in this world's Hall of Fame. In fact, you may be so unknown that no one knows your name. The trophies, the honors, the flashbulbs here may pass you by, and neon lights are blue. But if you love and serve the Lord, then I have news for you. This Hall of Fame is only good as long as time shall be. But keep in mind, God's Hall of Fame is for eternity. This crowd on earth, they soon forget the heroes of the past. They cheer like mad until you fall, and that's how long you last. But in God's Hall of Fame, by just believing in his Son, inscribed, you'll find your name. I tell you, friend, I wouldn't trade my name, however small, that's written there beyond the stars in that celestial hall, for every famous name on earth or glory that they share. I'd rather be an unknown here, have my name up there. And I guess that really does say it all. Congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Just found out. I guess I'm the pitcher in that situation, huh? The one you were hitting in front of? The pitcher? Pitcher's always...
Most of my life, I batted in front of Mickey Mantle. I batted second, and Mantle batted behind me. And
okay.
So you may compare yourself with Mickey Mantle.
All right. Now, you all heard that, right? So now when you see me out in the community, just call me Mick. In closing tonight, I would like to say thank you to every one of you, and especially the gentleman up front for letting me be here. This is just an honor for me to be among such great sports people in general, just great sports people. We'd also like to, in closing, say thank you to a lot of very special people. Now, I know when you get up in front of a crowd and you start to say thanks to people, that a lot of times they just come out and the people listening maybe don't hear, and just, you know, thank yous are just kind of things people do. But these thank yous go out to people that really, really matter, and topping that list is Charlie Morrow. And the rest of the Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame committee, without them, there would be no Hall of Fame. Also on that list is Debbie Ball, Greg Camp, the Honorable Aaron Cohn, Wallace Davis, Herb Green, Sammy Howard, B.R. Johnson, the Honorable A.J. McClung, John Schinkel, Sam Welburn, Jim White, and Colonel Larry White. And on behalf of the entire Chattahoochee Valley Sports Hall of Fame and the city of Columbus, and of course all the surrounding areas, I'd like to say thank you for being here tonight. It was a wonderful evening for me, and everyone please drive home safely. Good night.